Okay, let's not waste time. Qatar just issued a nuclear warning to Israel. Yeah, nuclear warning. And that sentence alone should terrify you. Because this isn't just Middle East drama. This is a ripple that could shake the entire planet. And here's the thing. Qatar doesn't even have nukes. Which means their words aren't about bombs. They're about leverage, power, and signaling. And when signaling involves the word nuclear, history tells us that's how miscalculations spiral into wars nobody actually wants. So today we're breaking this down. Why did Qatar issue this warning? What does it mean for Israel, the region, and the world? And why this moment is way more dangerous than people think. Let's start here. Qatar is tiny, like it's smaller than Connecticut, but it punches way above its weight. Why? Energy. Qatar sits on one of the largest reserves of natural gas in the world. That's like sitting on an oil well in 2023. Everyone wants a piece. Europe, Asia, even the US. They all depend on Qatar's exports. But here's the twist. Qatar has always marketed itself as a cool kid mediator in the Middle East. They host peace talks. They fund humanitarian aid in Gaza. They keep lines open with everyone. The US, Iran, Hamas, Israel, you name it. And now, the same Qatar just dropped a nuclear warning. That's not just a pivot. That's a backflip into a different arena. Israel, on the other hand, has been in non-stop conflict since the day it was founded. Right now, it's locked in battles with Hamas, Hezbollah, and dealing with an increasingly hostile neighborhood. And let's be real. Israel has the world's kept secret. Their nuclear arsenal. They don't admit it. They don't deny it. But every intelligence agency in the world knows they've got nukes. This policy of strategic ambiguity works because it makes enemies think twice before pushing too far. So when Qatar, a country that doesn't even have nukes, tells Israel to watch itself in nuclear rhetoric, that's basically calling Israel out, challenging the biggest unspoken weapon. That's a provocation. Here's why this gets scary. Nuclear threats are not about actual nukes. They're about psychology. Think of the Cold War. The US and the Soviet Union used nuclear language all the time. Not because they wanted war, but because they wanted to flex. But here's the problem. When both sides start flexing, accidents happen. Someone misreads a move, overreacts, and suddenly you've got Cuban Missile Crisis 2.0. And right now, the Middle East is already a tinderbox. You've got Gaza burning, Hezbollah firing rockets, Iran putting strings in the background, Saudi Arabia and the UAE secretly balancing alliances. Now add Qatar yelling nuclear into the chat. That's like throwing a Molotov cocktail into a fireworks factory. And here's the awkward part, the United States. The US is Israel's closest ally. Billions in aid, military support, full-throated backing. But the US also runs its biggest Middle East military base out of Qatar. That's right, Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar is the nerve center of American operations in the region. So if Israel and Qatar go head-to-head, America's caught in the middle of two of its closest partners. Do you see the nightmare scenario here? The US would basically be fighting itself. Now let's zoom out, because this isn't just about Israel and Qatar. This warning has shockwaves across the globe. Russia loves chaos. Every time the Middle East flares up, oil and gas prices go crazy, which makes Russia rich. So they are sitting back like, yes, more please. China sees this as a chance to step in as a neutral broker. They've been trying to position themselves as peace mediators in the Gulf. A crisis like this, that's Beijing's chance to flex against Washington. Europe, terrified because Qatar supplies them with natural gas. And after Russia cut off pipelines over Ukraine, Europe literally cannot afford another energy disruption. So when Qatar issues a nuclear warning, it's not just rhetoric. It's basically holding a knife to the global economy's throat. And we can't ignore this. Palestine. Qatar has always been one of the loudest supporters of Palestinian rights. They funnel aid into Gaza. They call out Israeli aggression. And they know across the Arab world, Palestine is the emotional trigger. So when Qatar says nuclear warning, it's not just about Israel's actions. It's about sending a message. If the world keeps ignoring Palestine, we are willing to turn up the heat. And here's the kicker. Other Arab governments, Saudi, UAE, Bahrain, have all normalized ties with Israel in recent years under the Abraham Accords, but their citizens still overwhelmingly pro-Palestine. So Qatar's warning, it's a reminder to those governments you can't just sweep these under the rug forever. Now let's talk money. Qatar isn't just a gas station country. It's a financial powerhouse. It owns stakes in London real estate, European soccer teams, US companies. If tensions escalate, investors panic. Markets drop, oil and gas prices spike. You think your grocery bill is high now? Imagine if the Middle East shuts down shipping lanes or energy exports. We're talking about a global economic migraine. Here's why this moment is bigger than headlines. The war right now is already juggling. Ukraine versus Russia, China versus Taiwan, US political chaos. Now add Middle East plus nuclear rhetoric. That's not just another fire. That's gasoline on an already burning planet. And when leaders throw around words like nuclear, they're not just signaling to each other, they are signaling to their citizens, to enemies, to allies. and the risk of miscalculation skyrockets. So what happens next? 3 scenarios. 1. It's just talk. Qatar uses the nuclear warning as leverage to get more global attention, then backs off. 2. Israel escalates, maybe with airstrikes, maybe with open acknowledgement of its nuclear arsenal, which then forces Qatar to double down. 3. Worst case, miscalculation. One rocket too far, one speech too aggressive, and suddenly you've got a regional war pulling in the US, Iran, Russia, maybe even NATO. And if that happens, the humanitarian cost will be catastrophic. Millions displaced, energy markets destroyed, a conflict with no off-ramp. At the end of the day, let's strip away the geopolitics. Because while leaders play power games, ordinary people pay the price. Families in Gaza, in Israel, in Qatar, they don't want nuclear rhetoric. They want safety. They want stability. They want to know their kids can grow up without a shadow of another war. But when leaders weaponize fear, especially nuclear fear, it takes us further from peace and closer to catastrophe. So, here's the takeaway. Qatar's nuclear warning isn't about warheads. It's about leverage. It's about forcing the world to pay attention. But history shows us, once nuclear language is on the table, things can spiral fast. And in a region already stretched to the breaking point, that's a gamble the world cannot afford. The question now is, will leaders treat this as a wake-up call to negotiate, or will they let it snowball into yet another conflict that engulfs millions of innocent people? Because one thing is certain, when small nations start playing with big words like nuclear, the whole world is at risk. If you guys found this breakdown helpful, hit that subscribe button because these stories matter and the mainstream headlines often miss the deeper stakes. Stay informed, stay critical, and remember, nuclear rhetoric is never just rhetoric.